So when people talk about online payments, usually the first thing that comes into mind is still the traditional credit cards. And in the case of the Philippines, and as Joseph alluded to, there are actually several other options, and that is where Dragonpay is currently. We're in the space wherein we accept payments for merchants from customers who don't have credit cards. So we position ourselves as the alternative payment channel. Uh, by alternative, I mean people usually pay through internet banking. They can pay over the counter by cash through any of the physical brick and mortar partner channel that we have. And this is very important because according to the Credit Card Association of the Philippines, roughly only 5% of the entire population of the Philippines have access to credit cards. And according to the Bangko Sentral, in a study by the USAID, at most, only 25% of Filipinos even have a bank account. So there's a huge market of people who do have cash, they want to buy online, but they have no means of paying online. And we take on a slightly different model. We are fixed fee based. Unlike credit cards, we don't charge on a percentage model. One question that people always ask me whenever I do a presentation is, so how big is really the alternative payment market? How many people actually pay through alternative means as compared to credit cards? Now, the problem with that question is there's really no single answer because ultimately it depends on the market that the merchant is targeting. Obviously, if you are deal grocer and you are targeting high-end market, 95% will probably have credit cards. But if you've ever walked into a CDR King outlet, 95% is paying cash. So it depends on what market you're looking at. Now, I was able to just get a couple of samples from the merchants that we deal with, just to give you a bit of a bird's eye view. This is from some of the big name merchants that we have, but unfortunately, I was not able to secure their approval to give names, so I cannot name names. But for these big name merchants who only accept credit cards and Dragonpay alternative payments, and they are targeting more or less the Class A and the Upper B market, they are actually seeing somewhere between 34 to 48% coming through alternative payments. So that is quite significant. And when I say big name brands, these are the names that you would see when you're driving along EDSA and you would see their billboards. So it's nothing to sneeze at. Now, another sample merchant that I took a shot of, and this is data as of January 2013, MetroDeal. I'm making MetroDeal as an example for two reasons. One, I was able to secure their approval to share the data. And second, I think they are targeting a very, very broad market. Now, I am not saying that they are representative of the group buying industry in the Philippines because every group buying site more or less has a market that they focus on. But what makes MetroDeal interesting for me is their market is very, very broad. They go for the masses. So if you are a merchant, an e-commerce merchant who are targeting also that same broad market from B right down to C, they might be a good representative of the total figures. By credit card here, I already included PayPal because in the Philippines, practically the only way to fund a PayPal account is through credit cards. So by pretty much the PayPal market in the Philippines is the credit card market. For MetroDeal, about 71% of their total sales came through credit cards and PayPal. The actual breakdown is somewhere around 67% credit card and about 5% PayPal. Again, not representative of the industry because I know Fred will probably tell you his PayPal proportion is much bigger. And I'm sure with Deal Grocer, it'd probably also be bigger. So again, it varies. But for a broad merchant like MetroDeal, Dragonpay accounts for about 27% of their sales. And everything else, which includes BankNet Online, GCash, Smart Money, what have you, it's about the 1 to 2%. So again, over-the-counter payments is nothing to sneeze at. Now, conventional logic would seem to say that people who have credit cards have more money to spend, and therefore they should be spending more. But as you can see from the slide, courtesy again of MetroDeal, only their average transaction amount for credit cards for January 2013 was only about 1,000 pesos. Compare that to how much people were willing to pay over the counter was actually 1,080. So people were spending more. Those who were using over the counter were paying more. And to consider that MetroDeal is actually below our average, which is 1,258. So people who spend cash spend as much as about 1,258 system-wide, but with MetroDeal specifically, it's about 1,080, but still bigger than the normal average for credit cards, which is quite interesting. Now, this is a breakdown of the payments that we see through our system. Dragonpay accepts internet banking payments, over-the-counter payments, physical ATMs, and what I call the non-bank channels, which are the groceries, the supermarkets, the remittance centers, the pawn shops that Joseph mentioned a while ago. Internet banking accounts for about 13%. You might say that the figure is small, but in reality, it has grown significantly. If you were talking to me 1 year ago, I would have told you online banking is only about 7%. So from 7% to 13%, it's a major improvement. But as you can see, on over-the-counter banking and ATM payments still accounts for a huge share of the pie. And this is something that has always puzzled me, considering why would people want to line up in banks? The lines are always long. The working hours are very short, usually only up to 3 p.m., and they are closed on weekends. But why is it that they still account for 61% of the volume? Is it because people have an inherent trust for a bank? Is that why people go there? Now, the next slide might answer partly some of that. I took this is a Google Analytic shot of Dragonpay's traffic from the last 30 days. So specifically January 26 to February 26, because I only took this last night. There is something quite wrong with the PowerPoint ratio there, but the biggest chunk, the blue chunk, which is actually 33-point-something%, is Makati. 32.7% is Manila. Of course, Google Analytics is probably not that accurate when it comes to breaking it down to the city level. But one thing that really is astounding about this chart is it says that about 94% of total e-commerce is happening in Metro Manila. Cebu is a distant 2%. It's a very, very distant 2%. And Davao, which is supposed to be the third biggest market, is a ridiculously small 0.6%. And the rest of the Philippines is not even significant enough to appear in this analytics chart. Okay, so I'm sure this figure could probably be our friends from the logistics, from the group buying side. They could probably tell you about the same story. They would know how many shipments they are doing out throughout the entire Philippines. And I don't know whether this is a specific scenario only for alternative payments, although I suspect that this is true even for the credit cards. All the e-commerce is happening within Metro Manila. And I know for a fact that the deal sites have tried going to Cebu, they've tried going to Davao, and I haven't seen any big deal site who has struck gold outside of Metro Manila. Go to any of the big sites, and so go Cash Cash Pinoy, MetroDeal. Most of the sites, the spa, the restaurants, they're all in Metro Manila. Now, of course, if you can look at this as a half-empty or a half-full mentality, if you are the optimistic side, you could probably say that the potential for e-commerce outside of Metro Manila is ridiculously huge. Right? It's more reason for you to go out of Metro Manila. The real challenge here is exactly how do you do it, and what is wrong? How come people outside of Metro Manila are not buying? Is it a logistics problem? Is it an income problem? Is it lack of access to the internet? It's for a lot of other reasons. But whatever it is, the action is still happening in Metro Manila right now. And we as DCOM, we would really want to bring it out all the way throughout the entire 7,000 islands. Now, online debit payments also has its own share of fraud. Unlike our credit card brothers, however, our fraud take a slightly different turn. And I took 3 general types of fraud that we have encountered over the past 2 years that we have been operating. The first type of fraud is online banking identity theft. We accept payments through internet banking of most of the major commercial banks. And by that, people would usually log in through BP Express Online, Metro Bank Direct. They would do their online payment through there. Now, this type of identity theft, although it does happen, it is very difficult to perpetrate for the reason that login ID and login passwords usually are a lot more complicated. They're usually at least 8 characters, 8 letters, numbers, uppercase, lowercase, symbols, what have you. And you can change your password anytime you want. Unlike a CVV, wherein the only way to change it is to ask for a card replacement. And the other thing that makes fraud like this very difficult to do is, unlike our credit card brothers, wherein the risk is almost always on the merchant side, with internet banking, the risk is always on the buyer side. If somebody makes an online payment for you using your BP Express online account, it's your fault. That's really how it works. There is really no concept of repudiation, because when you sign up for an internet banking facility, what you are saying here when you sign on the piece of paper is anything that you do transacting with this user ID and this password is assumed to be yours. So you cannot take it back. It's very similar to withdrawing from an ATM machine. If somebody uses your card and the PIN is correct, you cannot go to the bank and say that wasn't me. There is no argument whether you gave it to your driver, to your secretary, and asked them to withdraw for you. You cannot deny it later on, because that's just the rules of internet banking. The second type of fraud that we encounter, because most of the people who do accept over-the-counter payments, usually they ask the customer, fax us the deposit slip or scan to us the deposit slip. So people who do these things can manipulate deposit slips and proof of payments. I have 2 samples here on screen. Anybody like to make a guess as to which one is fake and which one is real? These are payments made at LBC. The customer actually called us complaining that, hey guys, I paid through LBC. Your system says it's supposed to be automatically validated the next day. It's been 2 days. How come my order still hasn't been validated yet? So we went through an investigation process with the LBC and all that. Anybody like to guess? Left side? Right side? Left? Right? Well, the answer is actually the right side. I don't know why you thought it was the right side. Maybe because the amount is bigger. But the fraud was actually pretty good. I honestly cannot tell up to now what is wrong with it exactly. The font is exactly the same as what you would get from an LBC receipt. It looks really good. But of course, since Dragonpay pretty much, we don't accept what the customer tells us. We take it from our payment partner. So in this case, we always check with LBC first. And it went through some investigation, and they said, given that sequence number, it couldn't have possibly come from Romblon branch. So I don't know how they were able to pull it off, but it didn't succeed because we don't rely on what the customers scan and send to us. We always check with the source. The third type of fraud that we encounter is some customers would make multiple purchases from a deal site for the same amount, and they would make a single payment. And then they would send that same payment multiple times. So they would send it, like once in the morning and send it again at 2 in the afternoon, send it again at midnight, thinking that, the group sites probably process it manually, in which case they're trying to fool them into thinking that they paid multiple times. But in those kind of fraud, when you only look at the details of the deposit is actually good. There's nothing wrong with it. The only thing wrong with it was only paid once, and they're trying to do it multiple times. So we do have some systems in place that do take into account all these things. So that's basically it from my presentation. We do also have a booth there if you want to talk about what we do some more, and I'll be happy to answer more questions during the forum.